Oscar Wilde, Irish writer, poet, and playwright, was born in Dublin in 1854 and died in Paris in 1900. The writer studied at Trinity College Dublin, where he distinguished himself as an outstanding student. His studies were followed by a period of travels in which the writer devoted himself to teaching. He soon married and had two children, but despite his marriage, he was denounced and imprisoned on charges of being homosexual, which at the time was considered a crime for the conduct of a man of his social class. The central theme of the novel, the portrait of Dorian Gray, is the deep desire to obtain and maintain eternal youth. The portrait of Dorian Gray, considered by many critics and scholars a manifesto in the literary movement called aestheticism, was published in 1819. Dorian Gray, a weak and corruptible character. The boy protagonist of the novel is an orphan who has inherited great wealth. He is naive and good at the beginning of the story and brings his beauty with indifference. The meeting with Watson is the reason for his downfall. The dandy persuades him to consider his beauty a gift and a weapon of seduction through which he can achieve anything. However, youth will disappear, and with this also his fabulous beauty. Dorian is frightened by the passage of time and doesn't want to see this extraordinary gift fade. It turns out to be corruptible and weak. At the end, his life will be marked by emptiness and corruption. Basil Hallward, the only voice of a conscience in Dorian. The painter Basil is a good man and sincerely fond of Dorian. He tries to keep him on the right track, not to let him be persuaded by Watson's speeches, but in the end he will not be heard and will end up being killed. This macabre event hides a broader message. It is the culmination of the decline and corruption of Dorian, who comes to make such a cruel gesture towards the only man who still constitutes for him the voice of a conscience. Harry Wotton. Unlike the painter, Harry, consistently with his dandy spirits, represents the devilish part that acts and takes hold of Dorian Gray's souls. It triggers a mechanism that will lead Dorian to self-destruction. This elegant, refined Englishman is lacking of morals and particularly cares about appearance and youth, of which he makes a real cult. He is responsible for Dorian's obsessions, which was certainly inclined to this degeneration, but which is triggered by the fuse that Harry lies in his weak soul. The Picture of Dorian Gray is a novel set in 19th century Victorian London, which at the time was pervaded by a typically bourgeois mentality. It tells of a handsome young man, Dorian Gray, who ends up making his beauty an insane ritual. He begins to realize the charm when Basil Hallward, a painter, gives him a portrait he painted, which portrays him in the majesty of his youth. Lord Harry Wotton will play the decisive role in the life of the named Dorian, whom he knows right at Hallward's studio. It is precisely there, in fact, that Wotton negatively influences Dorian, who begins to see youth as the most important thing to defend in his life. So much so that he feels envious of his own portrait, which will be eternally beautiful and young as he grows old. Struck by panic, Dorian states that he would have given anything, even his soul, to remain eternally young and beautiful, so he makes a pact with the devil. He will always stay young and beautiful while the sign of his physical and even moral decay will spill over his portrait. Dorian then starts on a tormented love story with the theatre actor Sybil Wayne, with whom he was supposed to get married. The relationship ends with the girls' society following Dorian's reputation after a show in which she had acted badly. Dorian begins to get frightened by the aspect that the painting takes on every time he commits unjust action, as if it were his conscience speaking to him from the painting. He therefore hides the painting in the attic and, giving him up to a life of pleasure, certain that the painting will suffer the miseries of fate in his place. He will not reveal the existence of the painting to anyone except to Hallward, who he will kill in the grip of madness fomented by the painter's comments, who had deeply criticized him for what he had done. From time to time, however, he secretly goes to the attic to check the portrait of him, but the picture begins to make him feel remorseful, and Dorian begins to be afraid, until it lacerated with the knife he had used to kill his painter friend. Dorian Gray will be found dead by his servants, with the knife stuck in the earth hole that devoted to the portrait that has become wonderfully young and beautiful again. There are many differences between film and book. First of all, the importance given to art. Dorian in the novel falls in love with Sybil by singing her act, and she loses her talent once she finds love. In fact, the boy leaves her for this reason, causing her suicide. The cause of the break between the two in the movie is instead due to Lord Watson's corrupting work. Furthermore, in the book, the homosexual bond between Basil and Dorian is made implicitly, also given the somewhat bigoted era in which Oscar Wilde lived, while the film is quite literal about it. The novel also gives less importance to the subplot concerning Sybil's brother, which instead acquires a certain level relevance in the film. The most melodramatic undertone of the film is highlighted by the figure of Emily and therefore by the ending, completely absent in the book. Watson's daughter gives Dorian the chance to redeem himself, while in the original text is only remorse of conscience from the libertine that requires him to destroy the picture. No one can claim to be truly indifferent to the passage of time. To a more or less intense extent, man has tried since the origin to leave a mark of his ephemeral passage in the world, through art, through heroic deeds or words, in order to die knowing that he has been there, that he has left his mark. This feeling is linked to the fugacity of existence, to the awareness of having to grow old and die. The dream of staying young, beautiful, full of strength and desire is certainly a common ambition, but man cannot escape this law which, after all, is also his fortune. Getting old makes youth a gift and not an eternal present. The only way to stay young is, according to Wilde, to sell one's soul, but this choice does not lead to a happy ending.